Alright guys, that's kind of key again. I hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. The LA Thieves officially confirmed their roster last night, and Kenny is giving his perspective on what exactly is expected of this team going into the upcoming season. Some big changes to that franchise this offseason, a great announcement video as well. But Kenny returns to Thieves for the first time in a couple of years. Lots of success with this organization before. Will it be replicated this time around with a very different team alongside him? How serious is the threat from this team this season? Very much enjoy to your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you are new as always. Plenty to get into. Wanted to start here. Don yesterday, he was going to do a top 10 list, like myself did, like Trey did the other day. But, you know, it's all rather similar, right? So we decided, you know what, put together a different list of the players with the most aura now to play against on the stage. Now, look, of course, this is incredibly subjective, which is, there's more objective things when it comes to championships, accolades, all of this. And I found that there was a lot of reaction to this yesterday, and I think Don found it kind of funny that, you know, at the end of the day, this is an opinion, right? So anyway, Don comes up with his answer. To me, I think the number one should be Formal. Obviously, I've not played against any of these guys, but just having watched competitive COD for quite some time, I feel like Formal's, let's just say, stage presence, as it were, was pretty, you know, he would strike the fear into the heart of the opposition. There is no doubt about it. And I think there was even talk about that sometimes Formal would, I don't know if this was related to Formal, but sometimes Formal would stand deliberately off of the head glitch when you were on one and gun you anyway just to prove a point. And like, that was the type of stuff that not many other players had in the arsenal. So anyway, Don has abeZy's number one aura all time. And this isn't just, you know, playing days, but also post-playing days. I think some consideration for that as well, maybe. Anyway, Formal, Clay, Kremp, Scump, Karma, Dashy, Huke, who's, I definitely think Huke deserves to be on it. I thought that was a pretty good shout. He's got HyDra at 9, and then JoeD in 10. JoeD, one of Don's favourite ever teammates. Attach, Drazah, and Zuma getting the honourable mention. So, yeah, intrigued to your thoughts on that in the comments below. I thought it was a funny little thing to put together. Of course, people weren't very happy here that abeZy had managed to get the number one, but I think the reason that abeZy was number one is part of this, right? As Temp says, your aura is unmatched even in retirement. You've got these fans upset about an aura list, right? So I think that's kind of part of the whole thing. And yeah, we get some replies talking about how, you know, it all should be about Scump this clown as his clan friends on top. I think people will find it rather funny. But intrigued to your thoughts in the comments below. Let's get into Rostermania. Nastie signed a contract. Where is he going to be? Good question. We think it's probably going to be the Boston Breach, which wouldn't have been my expectation coming into this off-season. I would have said a few weeks ago that Nastie to Toronto made an awful lot of sense. They have CleanX, JoeDeceives, and of course Real on their roster. Not so sure what Insight is going to do, but we think probably he's now going to go back to that team and Nastie is going to go to Boston. Questions on whether that's a good idea or not, but it looks like the contract is signed, so at least Nastie's getting a spot next year. But and look, I actually think that Boston team could be pretty damn good. Maybe not the spot that I would have expected after the season that Nastie had. Maybe things have changed. What's not changed is the Thieves roster that we thought it was going to be. Now, we've known this for some time. There were rumours that they were going to announce it last Saturday. That never happened, and then they decided to either delay things or they were preparing something. The announcement officially drops last night. They did a great job with the announcement. Thought this is pretty sick. You know, we've got the Men in Black vibes going on, and, well, the new tiny terrors, as it were, as JoeDeceives is going to say in a second. They step out of the car, and, well, it's pretty obvious who these gentlemen are right here, right now, and they've got the whole Men in Black thing going. And there was a few interesting moments here, because as they walk down the corridor and walk into HyDra and Scrap, HyDra and Scrap are talking about what their team could be. They say, oh, you know, could we think about bringing in Kismet? What about Neptune, Nero? HyDra's not so convinced of that. He then sees the fellas behind him and, you know, some good quality acting here as always. So yeah, they did a good job putting this one together. They did some good announcement videos over the last few years, Thieves in general. And yeah, pretty wild, right? aBeZy now on LA Thieves. Kenny is back on the Los Angeles Thieves for the upcoming season, and this is their roster of 4. This, to me, is an incredibly scary team on paper, and there will be some debate on how they'll actually do. But I think I really like what they've put together here. People were talking about a throwback as well to some of these old LA Thieves announcement videos and the stuff that I've done over the last couple of seasons. So, look, Kenny's been around the block with Thieves now for quite some time. JoeDeceives gave some pointers to, look, it was a good announcement video. I don't think anyone's going to deny that. Does it kill the hype? Does it ruin the announcement? I mean, I actually totally disagree with JoeDeceives on this. Like, I agree that you can still do a good video. But obviously, to some extent, I'm part of the problem, right? Because I talk about these leaks when they happen. But, you know, imagine how different this would have hit. It still would hit better, right? Like, I don't know. I don't really care. Leaks are always going to be a thing, and I'm not complaining about that. But just imagine that there were no leaks, then announcement videos like this would naturally hit harder, right? So, you know, it doesn't totally kill the hype or ruin the announcement, but it does make it worse. You know, we've had some occasional changes in recent COD history that totally come out of nowhere. It's pretty rare nowadays, but when it does, it's kind of nice when it happens. But still, commendations deserving to Thieves, even though we knew what the roster was going to be, still putting together what was a pretty hype announcement in the end. And as Kenny says, the return, LA Thieves is back. So it's remarkable, I think, to many that Kenny is back in this position, right? And you could argue a similar thing after his challenging Modern Warfare 2 season, which was not a good season for him really on Thieves statistically. He went to OpTic the following year, and there were questions as to whether he deserved that opportunity. Certainly after the year that he just had, people are going to question this. Now, this is pretty funny, right? Because, of course, aBeZy and Simp, the Tiny Terrors, and they've got this picture that JoeDeceives tweeted out and says, damn, I thought the Tiny Terrors split up, but no, maybe Kenny is part of the tribe yet again. So I thought that was pretty funny to think about. I think Kenny was in the replies as well. So, yeah, congrats to Kenny on the move. And I think of the trio on FaZe, of the Cellium, Simp, aBeZy trio, who's done the best out of this? There's a couple of ways you can argue it. Cellium has done the best in terms of pure payday, you would well imagine, on the Falcons, but over the long term it may not be the best. Simp is still very confident in what he can do at FaZe, but I think that aBeZy's got to be pretty happy with this turnout, right? To go from playing with Simp for the last 6 years to going to play with HyDra, it ain't a bad little selection, right? And I think that aBeZy's also got a fair bit to prove. Okay, yeah, he's a two-time world champion, but over the last couple of years, there have been questions. Ben J was questioning his play in Hardpoint and his efficacy in Search and Destroy, getting the first bloods, but, you know, making sure he's in position to get traded. All these sorts of things have been some criticisms of aBeZy, despite his incredibly high level over the last few years. So I think aBeZy will have an exciting battle this upcoming year, certainly with his former teammates in Simp and Cellium on the teams that they are now officially confirmed to be on. But the Kenny thing is probably going to be turning heads here the most. Sender drops the devil horns emoji or whatever, kind of saying, look, watch out for this team, we're going to be pretty deadly. And they absolutely should be, right? Like, this team on paper is devastatingly good, I think. There are questions, however. Last year they had Ghosty and Envoy. They've replaced those guys effectively with Kenny and aBeZy. HyDra and Envoy worked pretty well at a time. Envoy, I think, did a pretty excellent job for that team last season, but I understand that they needed to make some sort of a change. They moved on from Envoy, and they've gone and got aBeZy and brought him in instead. I mean, a HyDra aBeZy sub-duo is, on paper, it is just ridiculous. I think that it will require some changes from those players in terms of the way that they play, because HyDra, for the majority of his career now, has kind of just been a do-it-all sub, right? Like, he would get the entry kills. He'd effectively be like Scump used to be for OpTic when he didn't really have a sub-duo. He would just do whatever it takes. HyDra would play over the last few years very fast, very aggressive, but also get loads of kills. And not many players in the history of COD have ever been able to even do that in the first place, but it's a reason why, you know, HyDra and Kismet was not the same type of sub-duo as Simp and aBeZy. But, of course, there's now aBeZy there, right? And he will be the first man in. I don't expect aBeZy to be changing his playstyle at all, and frankly, nor should he. It now depends how they'll kind of fit that in, right? Because HyDra and Kiz, HyDra and Envoy is definitely a different duo than HyDra and aBeZy, you would imagine. So how that's going to work, you know, I think it's probably going to work rather well. aBeZy could make HyDra's life even easier, which could be pretty scary for the ops. And then you've got the AR duo, right? Scrap, we know what he's been doing over the last few years. So I think the big question to many, really, is around Kenny. So I'll share a couple of clips here, Octane's reaction and Kenny's reaction as well.
Ken, I think we're good.
Nah, we're not done yet.
Wow. Like, why are we throwing kids in that? Like, no disrespect, you know what I mean? Like, no disrespect to the boys or anything, but like, why are we throwing like kids in Euro in there and shit? My bad. But you know what? That's my bad, bro.
I'll stand up to it.
We got a tiny terror, dude. Kenny's back! Oh my god! Wait, why did I throw like a pussy? Holy shit, Kenny's back, chat. Oh my god. All that just to beat Merc, dude. Fucking insane. All this just to beat Merc.
Yo, actually that was actually like one of like the most fun like we've ever had, like shooting an announcement video. Like, how I feel to be back feels great. Obviously, feels fucking great. Kind of the team where it all started, so hopefully we can, you know, add on to the collection I already got there. I'm low-key kind of tight. Now that I think about it, like, I'm low-key kind of tight. What did he say? Here, we can bring it up, bro. It's a great tweet. It's a great, I'll give him that. It's a great tweet. But like, yeah.
So Kenny says in his tweet, feels great to be back, excited to get to work with the squad and win some more championships for Thieves, because yeah, Kenny's been all over the place over the last few years. This is now his third time on Thieves as an organization, already a Hall of Famer. I mean, there's not too many other ways to put it. But look, he turned up to Thieves back in Black Ops 4, played for 100 Thieves as they were back then, won a couple of championships, London and then Anaheim shortly after that. Then he was on OGLA the following season. That spot then eventually became Thieves. He had a difficult year in Cold War, but then Vanguard all of a sudden won the World Championship. They won an event in Modern Warfare 2 as well. Then he left to OpTic, won champs there. This season, though, was not so pretty at all individually or from a team perspective when Kenny was around. Then he's on the Thieves. So this, I think, is where most of your comments will be about, as to whether Kenny either deserved this spot or whether he is going to be the player holding this team back for the upcoming season. Because Kenny, this year on OpTic, was not an individually strong player. There were loads of potential reasons as to why. You know, he thought that maybe the PC was broken or something. Maybe it was. I don't know. There was talk about potentially his PC was a bit cooked when he was on OpTic. It was getting in his head to some extent. I think his approach for playing the game from, let's say, like a leadership perspective, maybe didn't match this game, Black Ops 6, as it did the most recent, you know, the game before Modern Warfare 3. Maybe Shotzzy's approach for this game was slightly stronger. And I think Kenny, in his, you know, leadership and the way that he wants to approach the game, will have to be adaptable when you've got Scrap, HyDra and aBeZy on your team. I mean, you know, it's difficult to put together a scarier trio than that, really. And Kenny will be the one trying to captain this ship now to more championships. So last year he had the .3 in the series against Thieves. He went to Rocker. He played better individually, but the team didn't necessarily even improve from when they had Paul X. So many would argue that, like, look, Kenny's past it, you shouldn't bring him in, he's not the right man for the job. But, you know, think about it, right? Who else should Thieves have got? There will be an argument to say they should have kept Ghosty, and I can see that argument for sure, but also OpTic did it before. They dropped Ghosty for Kenny, and the following year it very much worked out. You know, do I think this team of 4 is going to last for 3 years? No. But do I think that they will be an absolute force to be reckoned with this upcoming season? I absolutely do. And look, even if Kenny's not dropping 1.1s, if he's just at a solid level, which I think he can still be at a solid level, you know, I still think he probably is the right man for the job, right? There was talk about getting Cellium, and that was apparently their target, or maybe they wanted Drazah as well. Drazah was never going to go and play with Scrap, and Cellium, even if he did want to go play for Thieves, was offered so much by the Falcons that was never going to happen. So given the circumstances, I guess that is the question. What would you guys have done? Because I don't really think there are any better options out there than Kenny for this job. The question was whether you, I guess, keep Ghosty instead. Now, Nadeshot says this is a W, right? Because, well, this guy says, I don't like Nadeshot for being a pussy, but damn, he might have champs on lock. And that's the thing. The last few years, I think this is the main thing about the Kenny pickup to me, is that his performances at the end of seasons have typically been very strong in Kenny's career. I mean, he's made numerous champs finals, even in his first few years competing, and his teams tended to peak at the right time. Thieves have had an issue with that over the last couple of seasons, right? The big events at the end of the year, well, just Scrap in general. Thieves this year was definitely truthful. They had a disaster at the World Championship and the World Cup. Scrap's not been able to get over the line at champs yet. He will certainly want to. HyDra certainly wants another ring. You know, I think if you want to win champs, there's not many pickups that I would rather get than Kenny, if any at all, to be honest, right? And maybe the team has a lower ceiling than they could have had without, you know, bringing in Kenny. But I think there's a good argument that for what Thieves want to achieve, this is the right way to go about it. So intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Thought there was some pretty funny comments again from Don about this whole announcement, which has now officially come through. And just a question for those of you out there who are OpTic fans. What are you feeling about this, right? Because I think this guy's probably talking a little bit sarcastically. He says, I am shaken as an OpTic fan. But, you know, I don't know, maybe he's not being sarcastic, because I don't think he necessarily should be. I think of all the teams out there next season, OpTic is the reigning champions. This is probably the one they should be most fearful of. But very much enjoyed your thoughts on all of this stuff in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.